Hello! Yeah, I know you normally don't see my face when it comes to these sessions, but if you follow me on Twitter, you know that we had some technical issues other than Tulip's mic dying. And that is, I messed up and none of the audio was recorded for the game. And, well, that's not good. So, to make sure that you guys aren't missing out on any key things that happened, and to essentially keep you filled in before we get to session 3, which I will double check and triple check to make sure everything's working correctly before we start session 3. This is what happened in session 2. Forgive me if I leave out a couple of things. I've got my notes up here to help me, but, you know, I tried doing this last night, and I was really tired after the gym, so it didn't really work. So the session started out with the players being visited by the wizard Arnold Gaunt, who came to the Forest Watchman's Tavern and gave them each a healing potion in order to give thanks to them for saving him. During the process of, you know, not only getting attention from the wizard, but also from the lovely barmaid Ella Witter, a tabaxi male nearby started to take interest in the group. He wandered over and introduced himself as Mute Who, and proceeded to ask him a few questions and queries. Let's see. And upon learning that they will be taking care of the orc problem, Mute decided to join them. It was a pretty, you know, brief interaction, you know, as Mute is player number 5. Let's see. After a 2.5 mile trek out of town, the groups found the orcs, and they immediately saw 2 of them. One was digging a trench around the campsite, and the other one was standing guard. Kiata, of all people, scored a nat 20 on his stealth roll to hide in the tall grass, and all the other players decided to hide there as well, as they try and sneak closer to the orcs. Unfortunately, Tulip, our little favorite halfling bard, was spotted, and one of the orcs began to get closer, and the other orc slowly got out of the trench to get closer as well. The players decided to launch a surprise attack, with Alvar throwing a javelin. See, it was Alvar threw a javelin, Regnus threw an Eldritch Blast, and I want to say someone threw something else, but the orc with the shovel got downed. He didn't even have his real weapon. He just had a shovel in his hand, and he just went thud. And then combat ensued. 4 more orcs ran up for a total of 6 minus 1, so it's 5. Decided to run up and start engaging the party, and that's when initiative was rolled. The orcs won. They rolled a nat 20 on initiative. They were going first, followed very closely by Alvar and Regnus, who both rolled the same initiative. So they decided, you know what, we'll go older to younger. So older to younger, but I kind of wrote it down as, you know, they went on at the same time, so that way they could rotate between the two. Followed by Mute, who had his own initiative, and then the last spot was the father and daughter pairing of Kiata and Tulip. And, you know, combat went about as about how you thought it would be. You know, the players won, but it was how the combat went. So the first orc, who was standing guard, whipped out his great axe and charged forward at Tulip, as that was the first one he saw, and he figured it's all her fault. The only problem is he scored a nat 1 on his strike. And you know how I like having little fumbles and things happen when someone rolls a nat 1. So the orc fell prone and his axe fell out of his hands, hurting his pride. Which, that happens. And then Alvar decided to run up and attack after the other orcs had moved closer to throw javelins. And he attacked the prone one and missed. Missed with a great sword with advantage, mind you. Yeah. Alvar did not have great rolls. But you know who did have great rolls? The monks. Because when it came to Mute's turn, he bursted from the tall grass, and with a critical punch to the back of the prone orc's head, he did major damage. And then he followed up with a max damage second strike, snapping the orc's head forward and, breaking the neck and just dropping it. Oof. It was truly the time of the monks, as not only did Mute, but also Kiata just destroy anyone that they went up against. With a flurry of blows, beating them down. But, oh, and Regnus got downed. He was hit by one of the javelins during the first round, and I want to say during the second round, one of the other orcs got close enough, and they were able to strike him with a great axe and dropped him. He was the first down of the party. Through that, and through rage, Alvar ran to his rescue and cleaved the orc in twain, right at the hips. So, yeah, it was a pretty nice combat. Let's see. Yeah, they raided the, after dealing with all the orcs, they raided the camp, destroyed the camp, broke down all the tents and everything. They found a bunch of letters, and they were trying to figure out what they said, but none of them spoke Orcish. But they do remember someone saying something about there being a half-orc in town. Also, Regnus found a coin. On one side, it was gold and showed a radiant sun, but on the other, it was silver and showed a crescent moon. So he decided to keep that for himself for a bit. So after going back to town and collecting their pay from the lawmaster, they sought out the half-orc of the town. Her name was Greta. She was a blacksmith, currently working on making horseshoes. When they, approached her and talked to her, she didn't seem all that welcoming, but at the same time, she did as they asked. And she, translated the letters. One was a recipe for, how to cook something properly. Another was construction, kind of construction guide for how the forward camp should be. And the third one was telling that it was a forward camp and that the rest of the clan might be showing up. Armed with this knowledge, the players thanked her and proceeded on. Regnus went and got the coin identified by the town wizard, who identified it that if you flipped it, and if it landed with the sun heads up, it would cast daylight. And if you flipped it and landed with the crescent moon up, it casted darkness. So Regnus decided, I'm going to keep this for a bit longer. They then decided to help the town with setting up the festival that was coming in the next day. Each of them, helped with setting up stands, setting up picnic tables and stuff, and a stage to where the band was going to be playing. Sorry, I lost my track of thought for a moment. So, also during this time, Regnus, the older brother, decided to go to the edge of the forest again. This is his second time doing so. And he put his hand on the tree and gave a prayer to Nalara, the goddess of the moon, who shared a domain, the domain of nature, with the Lady of the Forest. And he was greeted with these roots that came out from the forest and tried to snap around his ankles to grab him. He succeeded on his check, though, and he was able to break his legs free before they dragged him through. And then the tree started to bend away as if opening a path for him. So, feeling his destiny was calling him, he moved forward. Alvar, seeing from the distance that his brother was going into the forest, decided to run up, fearful for his brother. But when he got there, the trees closed and created kind of a tight fence to keep him out. He placed his hands on the tree and called out for his brother, who failed his perception check with a nat 1. And then Alvar was treated to the same, with roots trying to wrap around his ankles. He failed his check, so he was dragged through the forest and took 15 points of bludgeoning damage, 3d6, as he was dragged over roots, rocks, and other things before being thrown into the river and left there. As he was pulling himself out of the river, though, a flower bloomed from the ground next to him, and a soft voice spoke to him, saying, I do not want you. I only want the tainted one. Rest well, good warrior. Tulip, having seen this, decided it was not a good idea to go tempt the Lady of the Forest, and Regnus traveled deeper into the forest before finally coming to a dead end. The trees had blocked any path forward and then slowly closed around him to block any path back. After a moment, the Lady of the Forest stood before him. The two had a very brief but heavy conversation, one that shook Regnus to the core. Though before he could prompt her for more answers or give more any questions, he was deposited into the river in the same fashion as his brother, taking 6 points of bludgeoning damage. The next day, with the festival, the party had quite a party. Mute showed that he loved women of all shapes and sizes, decided to make friends with the dwarven woman and get some drinks and flirt. Tulip played with the band and showed that, she's just as good a performer and was happy that people were dancing to her music. Kiata played a number of various games, including darts, in order to win prizes for Tulip. Best turtle dad. Alvar showed off his strength, and Regnus kind of simply wandered and watched, still shaken by what he had learned from the night before. Oh, and speaking of Alvar, he almost lost his first round of arm wrestling against the old and weak Lawmaster Hemlin Gaunt. Because while he rolled good, I believe he rolled 19 on his strength check, Hemlin Gaunt, with a strength score of 9, so a -1 to strength, rolled a nat 20. So it pretty much was that Alvar wasn't taking him seriously and almost lost the first round because of it. He was quick to regain the control, and he easily defeated the aged man, though his next opponent was Greta, the half-orc who had helped them before. This turned into a much more epic contest of strength, as the two both used their barbarian rage to just overcome everything and push each other. It even made the pot, go more. I think it was originally like only 20 gold pieces, and it ended up going up to closer to 34, as people were throwing money in it, betting on who would win. And Greta, unfortunately, lost, losing to Alvar, who they both had good sportsmanship about this. But yeah, so it came out to be a very interesting match, because the two were just constantly pushing each other, slowly overcoming each other, before finally it was more of a test of endurance than strength. Alvar's last opponent was a dwarf named Alder. He challenged him, and while it was a quick match, the dwarf mentioned that he needed to speak with both of the brothers, as they both had entered the forest. And when they spoke, he revealed to them that he was a dwarf of the Buzanar Mountains, that he came to Heldas as he heard there was a rumor that the Lady of the Forest was safeguarding the dead body of Queen Uriwin Sunarrow, the last queen of Talnion. The tributes in the past that he had asked, as well as the townsfolk, won't speak to him as to this, or as to whether it's true or not. He wishes to know if it was true, because if it was, it would legitimize the rebellion that is currently happening in Talnion. It would give Kahir, the rightful king, true stand against General Galadan, who is the current ruler of Talnion. And he mentions that also the dwarves of Buzanar truly loved the elven queen, Queen Uriwin, because she was honorable, and she not only kept to the word of her ancestors of a defensive pact between the two, but she was a good queen, and she was peaceful with them, and trade had bloomed between the two of them thanks to her. And while overhearing this, Mute decided it's just a forest. What's so hard about entering it? Because the dwarf also mentioned that he was barred from entering the forest, that the trees would never allow him to pass. So, Mute decided to run on up and stomp into the forest, and proceeded to get captured by the roots. Though he decided that instead of doing a check to escape the roots by pulling his legs free, he wanted to slash at the roots with his claws. So, after a nat 20 to cut through once again, He was rolling fire most of the night. A nat 20 to cut through the roots with his claws. He took only half damage. I can't remember exactly how much, but then he ran out of the forest. Quite surprised, and a number of the townsfolk laughing at him. It's like, we told you. Soon, though, the festival started to die down as they gave Ella Witter, the barmaid, the many gifts that she would give to the Lady of the Forest as part of her tribute. Tulip in the band, played her off as the townsfolk began to prepare a large feast. About 30 minutes passed, and then a horrid noise erupted from the forest. The sound of wood grinding on wood, followed by a wailing noise that just shuddered through the air. The group ran forward and to the edge of the forest, with Tulip able to squeeze through the last little gap of the trees before they fully closed. And as she landed on the other side, a flower bloomed from the ground, and it said, "Little one, it is dangerous in the forest. A stalker of darkness has attacked the tribute. You and your friends may enter the forest. No one else. This creature dared to attack my tribute, and dared to attack me." And the session ended with that. Well, the session ended with the players, getting into the forest. But, like I said, I wanted to recall all of this for you and tell it to you so that way you know what happened. So that way you have a good idea as to what happened when we go into session 3. Once again, I apologize for the fact that not everything recorded like it should have. And I will make sure to double check and triple check to make sure everything's working correctly next time. Anyways, see you next time.